Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. We are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Brakey, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Hey there, all you porcupines, you. This is, as always, your host, your renegade statesman, your executive director for the Free State Project, Eric Brakey, coming to you for another episode 44 of the Porcupine Report. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, this is an important week. This is the week of Thanksgiving. So I hope that you have the opportunity tomorrow to get together with friends and family and share in the things that you are thankful for. Of course, I think these days I have so much more appreciation for Thanksgiving because of all the years they tried to take it away from us during the COVID era with Anthony Fauci. We had to check the TV to look at the people in authority to tell us whether we could gather with our friends or our family or not. What dystopian times. And on that note, I am particularly excited to give my congratulations to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who I've been following since the COVID years, who has just announced that he's being appointed to be the director of the National Institutes of Health. These are the very organizations. If you don't know Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, he was targeted by these organizations for censorship because he was a dissident on the COVID regime. He warned against the dangers of mass lockdowns, the irreparable damage this would be doing to so many people, including our young people, denied access to education, to those who are on the margins dealing with substance abuse or mental health issues, being denied the opportunity to be social or to have their purpose in life stripped away from them. And of course, we did see tremendous damage with across the country, excess mortality rates for including young people who are not especially susceptible to COVID fatalities. We saw excess mortality rates spike dramatically. I think that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya has been proven right, and it is it tells you maybe there is justice in this world that he will now be leading the very organizations that persecuted him for his dissidence. So congratulations to Jay Bhattacharya. Looking forward to seeing that. I think that's a confirmable position. So boy, those confirmation hearings in the Senate are going to be something to watch. I do also want to say it has been a crazy month for me as I've been traveling the country. You may remember I was in Austin, Texas for a week, and I just got back from Tennessee, which is the 6th freest state in America, for the Young Americans for Liberty Hazlitt Policy Summit. It was great to see a lot of old friends there, including Senator Rand Paul, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, and a lot of legislators from both New Hampshire and Maine. Sometimes I felt as we were for those who don't know, the Hazlitt Policy Summit is a gathering of Liberty legislators in state capitals around the country. Over 400 now working to advance liberty in our lifetimes in their own state capitals. Of course, the biggest turnout was from New Hampshire legislators because there are so many of them. But at times I felt like I was in a tug of war between my old legislative friends in Maine and my new legislative friends in New Hampshire. A lot of good work is being done. I will say one of the really great items of news that should spell some competition for those of us in New Hampshire working for a free state is that in the state of Wyoming, which by the way is currently only ranked the 16th freest state in America, Liberty legislators took majorities in their House and Senate. There is now a Liberty Speaker of the House, a Liberty Senate President. Wyoming, well, we'll see if they can climb the charts from 16 to something higher than that on the Freedom Index. But it is always good. I think it's good when other states are giving us in New Hampshire healthy competition in terms of who can achieve freedom the fastest. So we'll be watching Wyoming, but for the time being, and certainly I hope for the foreseeable future, New Hampshire still remains the #1 freest state in America, the liberty capital of our country, and that is great. Now, I will say right now, you might notice that if you're watching a video version of this podcast, I'm not in my normal digs. I'm actually in Ohio, the 21st most free state in America, kind of middle of the pack, but hopefully getting better. I'm actually broadcasting from my brother's house. Actually, his wife, my sister-in-law, was recently elected as a county commissioner. She led the charge in Ohio for getting rid of mask mandates in schools, and look forward to seeing what she does out here. But gathering together as we all should for Thanksgiving with our loved ones. And so I'm in Ohio with family this week. But still maintaining my commitment to you to bring a new episode every single Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. So I hope that you will like and share this video with your friends and help us grow the audience for the show. Always enjoy getting feedback from everyone who's listening in. And this Thanksgiving, I will say I am very thankful for all of everyone in the Free State movement, and especially to all those who are volunteering their time and their energies to help us continue to build the freest state in America and an example for liberty in the world. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to the audience here for helping to promote the show and all the great feedback you continue giving me. For today's episode, we have a great guest who I think I've met briefly a couple of times along the way over the years, but just recently when I was in Austin, Texas, I happened to get invited to the premiere of a new short 11-minute movie directed by this individual and his organization. Well, I'll just tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll start talking. His name is John Papola. He was formerly the creative director at Spike TV, but now he is the founder and CEO of Emergent Order. He has his own podcast called Dad Saves America, which you can find on YouTube and other podcasting apps, though I'm told that the video elements of this podcast are great, so it's best enjoyed in a video format like you might find on YouTube. I first encountered his work must have been about a decade ago. And maybe you're familiar with this. They went very viral. They were very popular videos about a decade ago of these rap battles between John Maynard Keynes and F.A. Hayek. In fact, they did two rounds of these videos that were very popular. But they are, through his organization, Emergent Order, they are producing more of these kind of ideological musical battles videos. And they are published now on, you can find them on YouTube under Radical Discourse. The most recent video, which we'll be showing a clip for in a little bit, is on immigration called Battle of the Borders. We'll be talking about that and so much more with John. So let's welcome to the show, John Papola.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me on.
By the way, am I pronouncing your last name right? I should have asked before we got on.
You are indeed. You are pronouncing it the way I have always pronounced it. However, if you're in Italy, they would say Papola, and they look at you like you have two heads if you say Papola when they sit. So, all right, an Americanized Italian last name.
Well, to our very extensive audience in Italy, I apologize, but to everyone else, glad we got it right. So, John, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you. And again, I've been. It was nice to meet you and talk a little bit with you more directly when I was in Austin. But I have been, I guess, without knowing you too well, I've been following your work for the last decade since those Hayek and Keynes rap battles. I guess to get started, how did you go from being the creative director at Spike TV to transitioning into kind of producing high quality, like libertarian content? How did you make that transition from, I don't know if you would call Spike TV more kind of establishment, like video production world. I guess if you're on cable TV, you must be, have some kind of establishment credentials. How did you get into Spike TV, and what caused you to transition into this new area?
So I'll try to keep this as short as I can so we can talk about all the exciting things that are happening in the present. But So I always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was a little kid. I was making videos the second my dad got a video camera. As soon as PCs were capable of ingesting video, I was spending all night long learning how to edit at that point with like little postage stamp sized video. And so I went to film school, came out, got a job at MTV. Actually, it was the animation department. So the folks that did Beavis and Butthead. And 2001, 2001, the dot-com bust actually killed that whole division of MTV. So Beavis and Butthead got their death sentence, and so did my job. And then I went to Nickelodeon, was there for several years, and then the sort of leadership team at Nick went literally a few floors up in the Viacom 1515 Broadway. If you're a Gen Xer like me or older, you'll remember Total Request Live out of Times Square. Like I worked in that building.
I do remember that.
And so I joined them. I went to my boss's boss, technically, Niels, who I've actually had on Dad Saves America. And I said, Niels, you're going to this new thing, Spike TV, First Network for Men. Take me with you. I want to be a part of that. And so I spent 7 years there and ended up being one of the 2 creative directors.
These days, would you even be allowed to create a network for men?
No. Of course not. But then again, we've all done it. It's called to both good and ill, I would say. The manosphere online is, Joe Rogan is the real network for men. So yeah. And he's kicking everybody's butt on ratings and impact, and they're all so upset about it that they can't deal with the fact that people want to hear a conversation instead of a soundbite. A combination of the financial crisis, becoming a father and a homeowner, and Ron Paul all came together in that 2006, 7, 8 timeframe. So I had this long commute. I was starting to listen to audiobooks and American history, and then I came across Ron Paul and John Stossel's Give Me a Break, and actually the book by Nassim Taleb, The Black Swan, actually had like a very inciting incident kind of element for me, because I listened to that book and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Let me find out more about this guy. And that was how I found Russ Roberts' podcast, Econ Talk, which became an absolute mainstay. And Russ and I together created the Keynes versus Hayek rap battles. So when Obama was elected and prescribed as a solution what I thought to be the very thing that got us into the problem, which was irresponsible, easy money, deficit spending, shovel-ready projects, which is for some people that remember those times would know that was like the buzzword. We have so many shovel-ready projects. We should just take advantage of these low interest rates that have been induced on us by near depression, and just piss all our money away on this stuff. It's like, oh, how does making us poorer make us richer? It's like this is this broken window fallacy of Keynesianism. So long as you spend, you're good. It doesn't even matter what you spend it on. Bombs, let's go blow up another country. Paul Krugman said on national television that if an alien invasion happened, he said something, this is almost a direct quote. If there was an alien invasion tomorrow, this recession would be over in 18 months. Like it'd be over. That'd be it. So being destroyed is the path to prosperity. This is the kind of brain rot that this very ancient, immediately stupid as soon as you think about it for more than 10 seconds, ideology sort of pushes on us.
Yeah.
My solution, in part because my wife thought my new interest in economics was punishingly boring. And we met at Nickelodeon, so she's a producer in her own right. And she's like, you should do something like Flight of the Conchords. Do something with music. Make this fun, because otherwise it is dry. I don't know who's going to want to watch this. So she was both right and wrong, because obviously people will watch a 1, 2, 3 hour conversation about this exact subject, number one. But at the time, doing a music video was a fun way to put my skills to work. And I actually wrote the first draft of Fear the Boom and Bust in one sitting having never written a song before, let alone a rap song, and not even being necessarily a big rap fan myself. And then I sent it to Russ, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is pretty good." And we tweaked it a little bit. And so the first one was actually mostly my script, and then the second one was a much more of a collaborative 50-50 split on the writing.
I will say, a testament to that. The fact is, like 10 years later, I still have like phrases from that rap video that are like seared in my memory, which is amazing considering the content of it. It's like that refrain, like we've been moving back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets. I want them set free. There's a boom bust cycle and good reason to fear. Blame low interest rates. No, it's the animal spirits. It's like the fact that I can remember that 10 years later, I think it's
very good.
Is a real testament to it. And I will say something I really appreciated about that was not just the way that you took these very complex, like economic arguments about Keynesianism versus the Austrian school, and you were able to boil it down to it. But I also just love the personality you were able to bring to these characters, especially like the humor in these videos of like Hayek being like the clear underdog that nobody has ever heard of and not treated with any respect, while Keynes, because he's the one just throwing money out to everyone, is like, it's everyone loves him because it's like always being like in a perpetual party where the alcohol is flowing and everything else with him. So I thought you guys really captured something beautiful there, and it so memorable. And a fun fact, I think I mentioned this to you, but I remember after the first one came out, I was in New York City at the time. This was when I was a baby libertarian, just kind of learning, Rothbard and Hayek, reading them on the subways back and forth while working as a professional actor down there. And I was very nearly an extra in the second video, but I had a conflict because I was in production for an off Broadway play I was doing at the time. So I missed that opportunity, but it is amazing to see kind of all these years later, this kind of work continuing and resuming. So
who's actually an extra, if you this is a testament to how survival is success in any domain. I came into this world of politics and even media with no family connections. I didn't have any kind of legacy of anyone I knew. It was like starting from nothing. And one of the extras in the second Keynes Hayek rap video, Jim O'Neill, was just nominated to report into RFK Jr. at Department of Health and Human Services. He's one of the reporters at the side of the boxing ring. Great guy, worked for Peter Thiel for a long, long time, ran Mithril Capital there. So it's just sort of interesting. You see how kind of as a generation, you come together with people to do things like this. And then if you're all still in the game, you might just end up kind of running things. It's a very weird, it is. It's like, it's an almost kind of survival of the fittest. Just stay standing and you might just be running things. I think that's what like the Free State Project is all about too. It's like, just stay at it, persist, and eventually you might just win.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important lesson for our kids too.
Yeah. Half the battle is showing up to things.
That doesn't happen. It's like we quit early. It's too hard and we quit.
Yeah. Persistence is key. Half the battle is showing up to things, whether you're running for literally like running for office, half the battle is showing up to people's doors over and over again, but like I've seen this over the, last, 15 years I've been involved in politics, that like, the Ron Paul ragamuffin who starts showing up to his local GOP meeting 10 years ago, like is now the chairman of the committee because he's been there the longest, as other people have phased out. And so there is something I think to learn about what they call it, the slow march through the institutions, which the Marxists and the neoconservatives have been doing for the long time, that libertarians should, maybe learn a thing or two kind of from the strategy there about being persistent and working through this. But it is also, I think, a testament to the fact that we did have this huge like cultural boom of these ideas that, of course, you played a part in with I feel like I don't know anyone who is like involved in libertarian circles back then who doesn't know the Hayek and Keynes rap videos and hadn't seen them and wanted to share them with so many of their friends and family because it was excellent. So it is nice to see that individuals like the individual you mentioned, downstream of that, this cultural boom of these ideas, we're now seeing these people with these ideas, work their way into positions of political power where freedom can be a part of the conversation going forward for how we fix problems rather than just growing the size of government.
One of the things that, you asked, how did I end up leaving and starting Emergent Order? And, I did the first video while still being an employee at Spike. I sort of took a couple weeks off at the end of 2009 and produced and directed the video and then released it in January of 2010. What was so striking and what really was like the thunder strike that led me to change my life was seeing the impact these were having almost immediately for people in classrooms. I have met so many people at the conferences you and I attend who will come up to me like I'm some kind of celebrity, which I'm obviously not, but it is neat. And it's humbling to have someone come up to you and say, I saw your video in high school because my econ professor or my social studies teacher showed it to me. And now I'm here, and now I run a libertarian think tank, or I work at, Independence Institute, or my favorite one of all is one of my producers, Jessie Bennett. Jessie saw the video in high school. She became enraptured by these ideas. She went into college briefly and was like, this is a scam. Left, came, applied for an internship by way of the Moving Picture Institute, our friends at the Moving Picture Institute, and picked Austin, Texas, hoping she could come work for us. Because I moved to Austin after we decided to start Emergent Order. Voted with my feet. New Hampshire might have been an option if not for the fact that my wife gets panic attacks in the cold. So that was out. No chance.
Well, we hope we'll get you up here in the summer sometime for the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
But just to close the loop, so Jessie came to us, a long time ago, more than 5 years, 7 years ago. And she, as an intern, as a college dropout libertarian intern, and she is the lead producer on this Battle of the Borders, sort of new generation of these rap battles that we just released earlier this month. And it is by far the most technically sophisticated thing we've ever done. And to see her, like, she is like a case study in the kind of impact you can make with people when you sort of follow your heart and put your ideas and your values at the center of your work, because that's all I was doing. I was just saying, I'm really excited about this Ron Paul Austrian economics stuff. I like making videos. Maybe I can do something with that. that was it. That was the whole thing. And then, an entire new life path opened up as a result.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I got to know Jessie in libertarian circles while I was in Austin, Texas, working at Young Americans for Liberty. And she is an absolute awesome person to have on your team. And her story's pretty amazing. And you know what? I think too, it's good advice, I think, for those who are maybe in their 20s, like that is the time to just like go and like chase your dreams. And maybe by the time you get to your 30s, you figure out if it's been a good path or not. And that's the time, I guess, maybe to get more realistic. But like in your 20s, like go pursue liberty or run for office or go join, take risks. I
would go even further than that. And I would say do that, but do it knowing that you're going to keep doing it your whole life.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, I guess you could say I was taking a risk moving to New York City and working in TV, but I was pushing 30 and had a family when I left my job to come to Austin and start Emergent Order. So all the things you're told, and this is a lot of what I talk about on Dad Saves America, this stuff you're told about how to pursue your life by our culture, like the median message of our culture is trash. Ignore all of it. You should get married. You should have kids early. You can have an adventure together. It's so much more fun to share the adventure of life with your family. We've really thrown the baby out with the bathwater, literally, in a lot of respects in our sort of modern post-war American culture. And I think I see some like green shoots, as they used to say, in Gen Z for wanting to reject the narrative on that front.
Yeah. It often does feel like, certainly the culture that at least my generation kind of grew up in. I'm a millennial, right? Was very much the worst thing that can happen is pregnancy, and the
miracle of life is the worst thing that can happen to you.
And I certainly respect and appreciate that when you're talking about, like, kids in high school. Like, you certainly it should probably be a good idea to finish your education if you can. Yeah. But there's also a danger in waiting too long and not having the opportunity to participate in kind of the long chain of human history and to I mean, there are different ways we can pass things on to future generations. Certainly raising kids is one of the most direct ways. There are other ways to do it too, but
for sure.
But
if you want to, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's the part.
Yeah.
That's my real primary message. Like,
yeah,
you got to pursue the life that you want to pursue.
Yeah.
But on average, most of us are going to derive our happiness from the same things that humanity has always derived our happiness from.
Right.
Which is family, faith, being in a community that actually is fulfilling and meaningful and that asks something of you, and having work that matters and that you feel like you're a contributor to. It's like, this is sort of we don't need to reinvent that wheel. That wheel is perfectly round. It's been worn to perfection by time.
Well, and certainly in a society where it seems like we are so starved for purpose, where we are, I think that, I mean, you ask me, if you were to ask me like why I think we have such a crisis of kind of, drug abuse and mental health issues, I just think we're starved for purpose because we've been separated from the things that historically give us purpose. And the worst thing that happens is people turn to politics as a source of purpose and kind of engaging in the tribalism of red team, blue team, finding their sense of purpose there. And that's probably the least healthy place to do it. But we could keep talking about this, but I do want to get to, you guys did just release your newest video, The Battle of the Borders. And again, I really enjoyed, by happenstance, as you were premiering this in Austin, another one of your employees who's an old friend of mine, formerly known as Ivy El-Zatari, now Ivy Carnes.
Yep.
She actually, she used to be a regular on my last podcast when I was at Young Americans for Liberty. We were both employees there. Anyway, she told me about it, invited me to come out. I'm really glad that I did. It was fun to connect with so many people and to see the premiere of this video, Battle of the Borders. Let's do a quick clip for our audience. I know the whole video is like 11 minutes long, so we're just going to do a small clip here, and we'll make sure that people have access to the link to the full video in the show notes. Renita, let's cue up that clip.
Introducing first, from Havana, Cuba, a professor at Harvard with an econ PhD from Columbia, the Prince of Protection, the Keep 'em Out King, George Borja!
We are one nation, united, free. To keep it that way, we need sovereignty. A border regulated with integrity, protected by folks we've elected. See, let's listen to our people's frustration and take back control of immigration.
Our porous borders have brought an invasion, tragedy, crisis, and exploitation.
I don't fault those who come to build wealth. Look at me, an immigrant myself. We came to this country poorer than poor, but did it the right way through the front door.
All right, John. So people have just seen a short clip of this video. What going into this? I know you, in the whole larger video, you feature a lot of different stand-ins for popular economists and thinkers on both sides of this issue. George Borges, Stephen Miller, Derek Jones on the more closed border side of the argument. Yeah. Brian Kaplan featured prominently, who of course was a recent keynote speaker at this past year's New Hampshire Liberty Forum. By the way, everyone, tickets are on sale for New Hampshire Liberty Forum for next year already. Throwing that out there. But in a nutshell, how would you describe kind of the different sides of this border debate that you're representing in this video?
Sure. Well, as we sort of took the formula of the Keynes Hayek videos and tried to replicate it to the best of our ability, because I think they have in them an almost accidental formula for great education. And so at the center of that is make the strongest possible argument that is available, even if you are delivering it and we try stronger than the people who make it deliver it. So I came into this, Brian Kaplan's a friend of mine. I'm a classical liberal libertarian type. I say that a little more vaguely because I'm also Catholic and my faith is playing a bigger role. And, we can talk about that a little later, but, so I'm pretty I'm pretty inclined towards a more open immigration in general. I tend to believe that American society has been enriched dramatically by the waves of immigration that have come into this country. That we are uniquely a melting pot society. We are not a blood and soil ethnocentric society, unlike the old world of Europe or most of the planet, to be perfectly honest. We're pretty unique. Maybe you can look at places like Brazil as some other examples, but there's not that many actually of large scale, genetically diverse peoples. And we are one of them. And we happen to be the richest, most successful society in all of human history. So that is my bias coming in as a producer. But I ended up spending most of my time trying to make sure the arguments against my ideas were as strong as possible. And so George Borjas, the leading sort of voice in the video, is an economist from Harvard. His work points to essentially the impact on especially lower skill and working class people of large changes in unskilled, largely immigration. He basically says, look, this is great for the people that own factories and own businesses because you get cheaper labor, but it creates a real competitive dynamic that is damaging to the people who are on the bottom ends of the economic ladder and trying to climb their way up. And you're basically importing people to jump on that first rung and kick Americans off it. That's like essentially his argument. And he's done empirical work on that front. He has not made as many arguments around the broader cultural issues that others, and that a lot that are in our discourse right now, right? So this is where like Stephen Miller, who was a prominent voice and now again a prominent voice in the Trump administration when it comes to immigration, came in about safety, terrorism, fentanyl and drugs, crime, and then again on the closed border side, relatively speaking, Garrett Jones from out of George Mason University, also actually quite libertarian, quite a free market guy, but he makes arguments in his work about how unique cultures are and how fortunate America is in having a relatively conscientious, high IQ society that laid its foundations, and that our success is in part thanks to that. We had ambitious riffraff, as Arthur Brooks would say, but also smart people coming from societies that had been relatively well nourished and for a bunch of other reasons, higher IQ, and that we need to be real careful about having like a mass amount of people come into the country from the global south, to be perfectly honest, who on average have lower IQs, are coming from countries that have much more dysfunctional aspects of their societies, politically and otherwise. And it's like, do we really want to turn ourselves into the third world is the argument, because that won't be good for anybody. So goes America, so goes planet Earth. So that's, I think, an articulation of their perspective right now. And it's what we tried to do in the video. And I think you have to take that seriously. You can't just say, well, you're a fascist and you hate brown people and blah. Like it doesn't work. It's mostly not true. I mean, there's some people who just don't like the culture to become darker, literally. I think that's not false, But that's not what is animating, I think, most people. I think most people have other concerns, and we have to take those seriously, and we have to take their arguments seriously. On the pro side, if I can keep monologuing for a bit here to get
go on.
Argument, is Kaplan, Brian Kaplan, as you mentioned, and Alex Narasta. And their arguments are fall into two categories. One is ethical and one is empirical. So on the ethical side, they're basically, this is essentially a kind of libertarian anarchism. It's to say where you are born is an accident of your birth. And if you accept the notion of individual human dignity, then you should want, as a moral question, people to be able to move to the places where they can thrive and their potential can be unleashed. America is that place like no other. We have plenty of space. And this is what has happened throughout our history. People come here, and as the lyrics at the beginning of the video, and wages take flight. The same person comes to America and earns something like 10x because of our institutions, because of our capital, because of the division of labor, because of the culture, because of the business environment, which is not perfect, but better than a lot of places. I mean, the global South has been brutalized by the worst form of colonialism in human history, Marxism. Marxism was a colonialist project that destroyed the lives of hundreds of millions of people, billions of people. So all this anti-colonialism talk is the biggest bunch of nonsense we've ever heard. Marxism is like a born in France German philosophy that got exported to the global South to destroy it. So you won't find any Marxism sympathy on either side of the debate in Battle of the Borders. We take pot shots at communism from both sides, justifiably so. The empirical arguments are actually the area where there's more room for debate. But basically say, look, a lot of this is hysteria. Immigrants, including illegal immigrants, based on the available data, which is not great or perfect or extensive, actually, have lower crime rates than natives. People don't come here and commit crimes. We're actually kind of a violent society, all things considered. So immigrants actually lower our crime rate on average, not the opposite. And the increase in crime we've seen recently is mostly about lefty weirdo stuff, defunding the police in the communities that need police most. Whatever you think about the cops as a libertarian, so be it. But most poor families don't want the cops to pull out and let gangs run their streets. Mm-hmm. And the economic arguments that Borjas makes are zero sum and don't take into account that people come with their productive capacity and also end up being consumers, although consumption doesn't drive growth. So I find that argument slightly weird. And so that is the battle. It's, are we a nation of immigrants that's capable of absorbing a lot more people than we already do and can be enriched by that and normalize them to the things that actually make America great, literally? Or are we a little more delicate and a little more subject to being destroyed by culture shifts if we have too many people come in with bad ideas and, frankly, in some cases, lower capabilities and won't know what the good they have it, and they therefore come and kill the golden goose? And I think those are really the arguments that are at play in the video. And I think our goal was to make something that you could actually engage with these debates, stripped away of all the woke moralizing and heated populist rhetoric, without pulling punches. So they're very strongly delivered arguments. They're just not trying to say you're a bad person if you're on one side or the other.
Well, I watching it, I really did appreciate the way you do steelman both sides of the debate. And like you say, you offer kind of the best arguments for each side. And certainly as someone who, to be honest, like, I don't always know where exactly I fall in this debate. I feel kind of tugged in different directions by arguments on both sides. But I will say, from a libertarian perspective, and I do feel like you addressed and took on all of these in this video, like I'm very sympathetic to like the concerns about, people come here and we give them voting rights to vote on what our laws should be and how the treasury is distributed. If you have kind of a mass influx all at once and we're giving out kind of voting rights, or we're not strictly enforcing our voting laws as they are in terms of people having to go through a process of naturalization before they can vote. I think that's certainly a valid concern that I have, because I think as libertarians, we uniquely understand that giving someone the right to vote is giving someone the power to help command the use of violent force and aggressive force against other people, because we recognize what government is.
You get to be one of two wolves voting on which sheep to have for dinner,
Yes. And so, in that sense, I know I'm always somewhat sympathetic to kind of like, compromises around like guest worker programs as a way to look at that. But then there's also, and this is a concern that, we were dealing with a lot when I was chairing the Health and Human Services Committee in Maine, which was the way that kind of the welfare programs create a perverse incentive. It used to be, I remember Milton Friedman arguing that in some respects, illegal immigration was better than legal immigration because illegal immigrants couldn't qualify for welfare programs and they were just coming to work. But these days, that's not true. You just have to file for asylum, and you can go for entire years stretches where you qualify for welfare payments. Certainly, I guess it's somewhat state dependent. Maine was very generous with welfare programs there, and that creates a perverse selection process.
And you're bringing up a centerpiece of the argument that I didn't raise, that's raised in at length in the video, which is, can you have early 1920s style immigration with a welfare state? Because like when my great grandparents came to this country in 1920, there was no welfare state. You didn't come to America and get a check paid for by existing workers in America. That was not a thing. And so the back and forth in that argument is interesting because some of it's philosophical and some of it's pragmatic. So I think both sides are like, well, don't give them welfare. And one side says, yeah, good luck with that. And the other side says, well, so are we just going to like give up on trying to build a wall around the welfare state? Are we going to like, what priorities should we have? Should we not let more people into the country because we have this stupid welfare state that is disempowering and destructive and wasteful, even if sometimes it's humanitarian necessity for some people, which I'll grant as a second best or third best solution to private charity. So that is a tension. We do have a lot of rewards now that didn't exist. It used to simply be hard to get here, and then you came and were made fun of and sent to the mines. So what kind of person is willing to come to a country, possibly die on the way, and then go work in the mines or like lay the roads and be treated like a second-class citizen? Well, that's somebody with a lot of conscientiousness, a lot of grit, a lot of desire to build a better life, and willing to bear the cross to do it. And now it's like, oh, come in and we'll buy you a hotel room in Manhattan and give you a phone and a debit card. Like, what the hell are we doing here? So,
I often think about, I think folks on the more pro open borders immigration side often point to like the poem on the Statue of Liberty, send us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But that's not really the offer these days. It's yearning for free healthcare is the new offer we give to the world. Come here and you'll get free healthcare. I mean, this is like a part of the Democratic Party platform these days. Like, yes, come here and free welfare, free healthcare, free housing. Frankly, a lot of free stuff that people who are struggling here currently in America, who are U.S. citizens, are not often entitled to. So it is, but so it does create.
Now,
yeah.
On the flip side, if Brian Kaplan or Alex Nowrasteh were here, they would say, yeah, except that we have declining fertility. We are becoming an aging population. Most of the welfare benefits spending in this country is on the old and the infirmed. That's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security disability. That's like half the federal budget and growing. And the average immigrant is a young working age male who will come in and mostly actually not use the welfare system all that much. And so their argument is that actually, and this is in the video, immigration, legal or illegal, ends up being a net positive on the fiscal balance sheet side of the equation. And that is, again, that's an empirical argument. It's probably mostly true, would be my guess, actually, if you just look at who's coming. And the best evidence for that is both sides love to attack employers whenever it comes down to dealing with illegal immigration. Oh, we're going to install communist e-verify, so the government makes it so that you have to tell the government everyone you're hiring and get them verified. I mean, you want to talk about like Maoism. E-verify is demonic. Like,
Well,
you should not support this if you believe in individual liberty. And yet that's the kind of actual boots on the ground policy that happens. So that does suggest that people are coming here mostly to work, not go on the dole.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I know I hear some of the immigration hawks who are oftentimes people who are prone to support kind of liberty in other areas, like advocate for e-verify. And I think it's not often appreciated that, like, for that system to work, it means every American citizen needs to be registered. It's like you have to, as an American citizen, you need to prove that you're allowed to work. And
file your I-9 form, all this stuff. I mean, you want to talk about fascism in the Mussolini sense of sort of the big state and the big corporate enterprise sort of combining into this body politic blob.
Yeah.
He verifies that.
Yeah. I agree with you. Not the right answer to
let's install a social credit score system so that we can protect our liberties. It's like, well, does somebody want to tell them what they're doing?
Well, I think it's interesting to see this kind of playing out, kind of like right problem, wrong solution to right now, where you have Senator Rand Paul in Congress who, Trump has campaigned on being hard on immigration, and he's talked about using the military to do mass kind of deportation. Mm-hmm. You have Senator Rand Paul standing up in Congress saying, like, we got to take the immigration problem seriously, but like using the military on domestic soil inside the United States is like, that's a Rubicon that we do not want to cross, even for something like this. But I also know that when you the nuance can be lost on so many people. Whenever you say, this is not the right answer to that problem, you're going to get people accusing you of not caring about the problem.
I think that there's a couple things. First of all, let me just say, like, for viewers or listeners who are sort of right of center and might be like, what is this lefty talk with the immigrants? I voted mostly happily for Donald Trump this election. I've talked about it publicly. This is an area where I am like not on the same page, even like blur your eyes. Like, I am way more pro-immigration than the average of the Trump administration. But I think the problem we really have to contend with is the Democrats suck. So what they did was, when they were in power, they talked a big game about immigration and did nothing other than like create quasi extra legal nonsense like DACA. They like to have permanent underclasses that they can exploit for votes. That is the history of the Democratic Party in the modern era. And people have started to wake up to that, including Black Americans and Latino Americans. That's why that move towards Trump in 2024 from both groups. I mean, I think Trump won a majority of Latino men. Yeah. While not correct. Moderating one iota on this issue. And I living in Texas, I'm engulfed in a Mexican American culture here. And I know plenty of people who are like, they were wearing their MAGA hats, man. They were eating tacos and wearing MAGA hats. And so I think black markets, we have a situation at the border right now that is the worst of both worlds. We have essentially a kind of prohibitionism as far as the legal process. It is very slow. It has a ton of trap doors you fall into, never to recover. And for example, I had a new friend over yesterday at the office, was the lead counsel for ICE for 25 years. He said, among the things that suck in our system is if you've ever told a fib about your immigration status, you can never get a green card ever. So you could have been brought in as a kid, and then if you ever lied and said on some formal way that's recorded, even if you marry an American citizen, thumbs down.
Yeah.
So there's all these crazy traps, and
I learned yesterday from a friend who's immigrating from the United Kingdom and is marrying an American citizen and is trying to get his green card, that they're still requiring to get your green card that you have to get the COVID vaccine. Like this is still
I think that's insane.
and flu vaccines, right? Like this is like something hopefully conservatives can appreciate. Like should not be a requirement, even if you are skeptical of more immigration like that. This is crazy.
I mean, if you want to do the MMR for measles, mumps, and rubella, okay, but the COVID vaccine, I mean, God, the flu vaccine is never more than like 30% effective in any given year, and it only lasts for like, so that's a perfect example. The legal path is run by imbeciles and designed like in a psychotic way that creates a black market. And so what do you get with black markets? You get Al Capone types. So you have people being smuggled in by cartels. You have bad hombres crossing the border because it's a black market, because we have a completely irrational legal path. So I think the Democrats have failed. Frankly, their entire apparatus needs to be erased. We need a new party contra the conservative right. Like the Democrats have nothing to offer America on any dimension in any issue at all. I don't think they should continue to exist as a party. I think it's game over for them. So I think for the people who are left, it's like, I think Trump actually has an interesting opportunity, being so hardline, to end up being like a Nixon goes to China president potentially. And yes, build the wall and militarize the border and all that stuff, but then maybe actually do some things that, like the Gang of Six in the Senate, and the more cosmopolitan people couldn't do, which is actually make positive change on the legal side of the ledger. I think there's a chance. I hold out hope that might actually happen now, which I know would be sounds like a crazy thing to believe, but I actually don't think so. I think there's quite a few liberty lovers in Trump universe, like quite a few. Yeah. And I think he's going to get a lot of interesting inputs, including from like the tech bro billionaires who, they have to rely on a lot of immigrant labor on a lot of fronts, but especially high skill engineers from Asia. So they know that we can't just seal the border shut and have the things that everyone likes. Like, it will impose really horrible costs. So I'm an optimist on this front.
Well, I certainly hope so. And I know that, there's been a lot of, I remember even Rand Paul years back talking about, like, we got to secure the border first. And then, like, once we secure the border, then we need to kind of create a more rational legal immigration system. But it does seem that, it's hard. It's certainly hard to do them in the other order.
I mean, the two things I would do if you made me king for a day would be, I would eliminate voting rights for all immigrants, legal and illegal, because I think this voting issue is what creates the political football problem. So you don't get to come to the game and change the rules. Sorry. You want to come to America? That's great. We want you here. You don't get to come to America and suddenly start messing with the rules. Yeah. You get to come in and live by the rules we've already got. That's number one. Number two, Gary Becker, the economist, brought this up years and years and years ago. Make them buy it. Set a price. You want to come in? You want to come in fast? It's $100,000. Mm-hmm. Done. Oh, you're here already and you're not a criminal? set a price, set a fee, call it whatever you want, call it back taxes. I don't care, but let's rationalize this thing. Let's create new barriers to replace the old ones, because the old barrier was got to go on a boat, you might die, there's no welfare. Like it was harder and slower to move, communication was slow. There was a bunch of selection effect elements of the old world that are gone. We should probably come up with some things that create positive selection effects so that great people want to come here, and they can.
Yeah. Well, we are running out of time, and I know there were a few more things I was hoping to hit on, but I'll just mention them briefly and give you the last word. You know, I know that other issues, and I think a lot of these were also tackled in the video, that are factors in all of this. Certainly, I think libertarian insights are valuable in this discourse. You know, when we talk about crime, you know, I think probably a lot of that traces back to the war on drugs and these cartels. So if we entered the war on drugs, that would probably solve a lot of that.
Yeah,
we talk about a lot of the refugee crises. I mean, it's hard not to notice that a lot of the waves of refugees coming to America and European countries are coming from countries where we've been intervening in terms of our foreign policy. I think of like the war in Syria as one of the greatest examples of that. And as far as kind of like cultural decline, I think it is it's hard to not to notice that, you know, I'm sympathetic when people are saying, well, are people going to integrate with our culture? And then people say, well, people in past generations did. But we are also certainly at an inflection point with kind of this cultural Marxism that is trying to degrade our culture and our sense of American identity. And it's hard to wonder what's going to be left for people to like integrate into when we are being told that our history is trash, our founders were terrible people, there's nothing of value to look at in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution to form kind of a sense of American identity around. And as our own sense of American identity is collapsing within our own country, what do people integrate into? I'll give you the last word to respond to those and to promote anything you want to promote.
Well, Eric, I think that's all beautifully put, and you put your finger on something that's really important. I have said, you know what? I'll take 2 conservative Catholic Mexicans for every 1 blue-haired gender studies graduate in a one-way exchange. Like you come out of Brown or Columbia, and you studied studies off to Mexico City for you. Hey, Juan, Carlos, come on in. The water's great. You're more American than these friggin' people. I'm being totally serious though. And we actually make this point in the video. You know, there's a line. I actually think I wrote this line because I'm not the writer of this one. Glenn Whitman is the main writer, great economist, Hollywood screenwriter, super awesome guy. You know, if you're worried about civic knowledge, your bigger concern should be who's teaching college. So this talk about our culture in America is complicated. First of all, we're a big, diverse country. We don't have one culture. We have multiple cultures. And I'm not some multiculturalist, like a moral relativist guy. I think the thing that unites us as Americans is the American creed. And we actually have it written down, which makes it kind of easy. It's not like it's not like England where you have to go back to the Magna Carta. They don't really have a constitution, and now they're just turning into like a totalitarian whack job hellscape that imprisons people for Facebook posts. No, we have a Bill of Rights. We have a fundamentally, I would say, Christian-inspired, Greco-Roman infused secular philosophy that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, property. It's not in there, but it was baked into it. And the pursuit, but not the guarantee of happiness. And if you want to come to this country, you should want those things. You should be assimilated, like the Borg, into that ethos. If you want to come here for free stuff and vote for Peronism or communism or I don't want you here, or at least I don't want you to vote. Maybe you can come here and believe cockamamie nonsense, but you know, if you want to come to America, you should want to buy into Americanism. And I think that that's fundamentally a set of classical liberal principles about the limited role of government and the maximum role of individual liberty. That, to me, is the eternal fight we face. And it's funny, talk about cultural Marxism. There's a study that just came out, and that, of course, our official news people at the New York Times and I think Washington Post actually decided actively not to report on, which said that all this DEI stuff, which everyone with 2 brain cells knew was divisive and explicitly racist, turns out is divisive and explicitly racist and actually engenders hatred, tribalism, and authoritarian mindsets when you do it. So I'm hoping that one of the things that comes about coming out of 2024 is the end of this era of insanity, this era of 1619 psychosis, that this country, which helped lead the world actually in ending slavery, which was the practice of every civilization, especially in Africa, especially in the Middle East, where it is still actually quite prominent. We should be proud of the United States of America for all that this country has done. And yes, our military interventionism has wreaked a lot of havoc. It would horrify our founding fathers to see the way we play games all around the world. Are we the reason why there's migrants? I don't know about that. Maybe. Or maybe we just made bad situations worse. I don't know. I'm not Dave Smith on this. I'm a little more like, I'm open to arguments on that front. But, I love America. It's why, if you want to hear more simultaneously hot-headed and yet reasonable takes, you can find me at youtube.com/dadsavesAmerica. And if you want to check out Battle of the Borders as well as the Keynes versus Hayek rap videos, they are available on YouTube at the newly rebranded Radical Discourse channel. So there's my little plug at the end.
Awesome, John. Thank you for coming on. And I know that you are planning more videos on more hot topic debates.
Yes.
Certainly, I hope that maybe a intervention versus non-intervention foreign policy rap battle would be a great one.
It's on the list. Climate, population, trade, those are in progress. The war on drugs, that's going to happen for sure at some point.
Awesome.
Pax Americana versus non-interventionism, definitely on the table.
Well, I'll definitely look forward to all of those. And John, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I certainly encourage folks to check out your video content. And it's a great thing to share with your family over Thanksgiving, to get everyone arguing around the Thanksgiving table, as if there's not enough to argue about already. But
it'll be a more informed debate than it otherwise would have been. So thanks for having me, Eric. This has been a blast.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, that's the show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. A quick reminder, of course, we are approaching the end of the year, which is fundraising season for nonprofits like the Free State Project, and we are continuing forward on our fundraising efforts. We are trying to raise $180,000 by the end of the year, and the good news is we have one large donor who has pledged $90,000 in matching funds. He will match dollar for dollar everything we raise until the end of the year. And that means anything you give at fsp.org/give will be worth double. So we've already, in our effort to get that $90,000 that will be matched, we've raised $40,000 already. So we've got another $50,000 to go over the course of the next month. If you've ever thought about contributing to the Free State Project, now is the time. It's greatly appreciated. And your impact will be doubled. It helps us bring in and recruit some of the best and brightest libertarians from around the country and the world. And the world, I will mention, in the Free State Project, we don't care about your national origin so long as you share the philosophy of liberty and non-aggression. I guess very relevant to the content of today's show. So if you want to contribute, it's greatly appreciated. fsp.org/give. And I will remind you too, Tickets are on sale now for the Porcupine Freedom Festival and the New Hampshire Liberty Forum coming up in April and June of next year. You can find all of those and more at fsp.org. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And furthermore, my opinion is the Federal Reserve should be destroyed.